We spend so much of our lives learning to mistrust ourselves. From childhood, we are handed measurements, standards, and comparisons that tell us whether we are good enough, fast enough, smart enough. Slowly, without noticing, we begin to treat ourselves as strangers, forever asking the world for permission to simply be. But the truth is, you were never meant to live by someone else's compass. To trust yourself is to remember that your own pulse is already in rhythm with life. Trusting yourself is not arrogance, it is returning to the simple truth that you are already complete. Arrogance comes from a place of insecurity, a desperate need to prove something to others or even to yourself. But trust is quieter, gentler, and rooted in acceptance. It is not about shouting your worth or placing yourself above anyone else, but about resting in the recognition that you do not need to become someone else in order to live fully. You are not lacking in the essential sense, for the essence of who you are has always been whole. The world may encourage you to search endlessly outside for validation, but the moment you stop running after mirrors and turn inward, you discover that completeness has never left you. To trust yourself is to listen to that inner current, the subtle knowing that does not require justification. So much of our hesitation arises from comparison, measuring our path against the footsteps of others. Yet every life unfolds with its own rhythm, its own shape, and when you trust yourself, you cease to imitate and begin to express. It is the difference between performing for approval and living in harmony with your own nature. There is a liberation in no longer demanding that you must be something other than what you are. This trust allows you to move without constant fear of failure, for failure itself becomes simply a turn in the road, not the end of the journey. When you recognize your own completeness, you no longer treat life as a desperate scramble to fill an emptiness. You engage with experiences not as a starving soul searching for sustenance, but as one already nourished, meeting the world with openness instead of lack. From this place, decisions feel lighter, less tangled in doubt. You do not demand absolute certainty because you know that no choice will diminish the wholeness of your being. Even mistakes, even missteps, are part of the unfolding expression of who you are. Many resist self-trust because they fear it will blind them to growth, but the truth is the opposite. When you know you are complete, you are free to grow without desperation. Growth then becomes exploration, not compensation. You no longer try to prove your worth through achievements or possessions, but allow yourself to evolve naturally, like a tree extending its branches while remaining rooted in the ground. Trusting yourself does not mean clinging to the same version of you forever. It means honoring your own unfolding as enough in every stage. The beauty of self-trust is that it dissolves the endless inner conflict. Instead of battling your instincts, instead of second-guessing every impulse, you begin to move with the quiet confidence of being aligned with life itself. And in that movement, you find that the world responds differently, not because you are striving harder, but because you are flowing from the completeness you already are. Trust is not something you manufacture. It is something you uncover. Beneath the layers of doubt, there is a knowing, a quiet sense that whispers what is right for you long before thought can argue it. You may call it intuition, instinct, or simply the natural intelligence of being alive. The difficulty is not in finding it, but in giving yourself the courage to follow it without demanding certainty. For certainty is an illusion. Life has never offered guarantees, only invitations. Doubt arises from comparison, but trust grows when you listen to your own rhythm. The moment we measure ourselves against another, we begin to fracture. We look outward, examining how far someone else has gone, what they have achieved, how they are seen, and then silently weigh ourselves on that scale. But no matter how much you compare, the scale never balances, for it was never built for you. Doubt creeps in not because you are insufficient, but because you are trying to walk in shoes that were never made for your feet. Every life is a unique tempo, and when you impose another's pace upon your own, you lose the music that is already within you. Trust, on the other hand, is born in stillness. It begins when you stop tuning your ear to the noise of comparison and instead listen inwardly. There is a rhythm that belongs only to you, a natural beat that guides your steps without the need for external validation. It may not match the tempo of those around you, and that is precisely its beauty. Flowers do not bloom in unison, yet each arrives at its own perfect season. To trust yourself is to honor that timing, to know that your unfolding cannot be rushed or delayed by the measures of others. Comparison thrives on illusion. You see the surface of another life and assume it is the whole story, forgetting that you cannot feel their doubts, their struggles, their quiet uncertainties. You compare your unspoken fears to their polished expressions, and then wonder why you feel small. Trust dissolves this illusion because it teaches you that there is no need for the comparison at all. Your rhythm is not supposed to be theirs. The song of your life was not written to echo someone else's melody. Listening to your own rhythm does not mean shutting out the world, but relating to it differently. Instead of constantly asking, "Am I enough compared to them?" you begin to ask, "Am I moving in truth with myself?" That shift is the birth of self-trust. It allows you to act without the weight of another's standard pressing upon your shoulders. It gives you the freedom to take steps that feel authentic, even if they look unconventional from the outside. Doubt will always try to return, whispering that perhaps you should be further along, perhaps you should mirror another's path. But when you are anchored in your own rhythm, those whispers lose their power. You realize that trust is not the absence of uncertainty, but the willingness to move anyway, guided not by comparison but by inner resonance. It is a quiet assurance that you do not need to be anyone else, for the tempo of your being is already in harmony with life itself. And when you walk in that rhythm, doubt fades into the background, while trust becomes the steady drumbeat carrying you forward. Think of the way a bird trusts the air. It leaps, not because it has a contract with the wind, but because it knows no other way to be. To trust yourself is much the same. It is to leap without rehearsing the flight, to breathe without analyzing the breath, to speak without rehearsing every word. In that moment, you move with the flow of existence rather than against it. Life becomes clear when you stop outsourcing your wisdom and begin to lean into your own knowing. For much of our lives, we are trained to believe that answers exist outside of us. In the opinions of experts, the judgments of peers, or the standards of society, we search endlessly for direction, waiting for someone else to confirm what we feel or to authorize the choices we wish to make. And yet, the more we outsource our wisdom, the more confused and divided we become, because we are trying to live by voices that cannot possibly know the intimate truth of our own path. There is a quiet intelligence within you, one that does not arrive through calculation or debate. It is not the product of endless analysis, but a kind of natural clarity that arises when you are still enough to listen. This inner knowing does not shout, it whispers. It is often drowned by the noise of fear, expectation, and comparison. But when you learn to lean into it, you find that life does not need to be so complicated. Decisions that once seemed overwhelming become simpler, not because they carry certainty of outcome, but because they feel aligned with who you truly are. To lean into your own knowing is to trust that you are not an accident in this world. The very intelligence that beats your heart and breathes your lungs also moves through your thoughts, feelings, and impulses. Just as the river knows how to flow to the sea, you, too, contain an innate orientation toward what is right for you. Outsourcing your wisdom creates friction, as though you are trying to swim upstream against your own current. But when you return to yourself, you discover that the current carries you. That clarity is less about finding the perfect answer and more about letting yourself move in the direction that already calls you. This does not mean that guidance from others has no value. It means that guidance should be weighed against your own resonance. When you blindly follow, you abandon yourself. When you listen inwardly, you can discern which voices harmonize with your truth and which do not. The difference is subtle but profound. Outsourcing says, "Tell me who I am." Leaning inward says, "I will hear you, but I already know what I am." Life becomes clear not because uncertainty disappears, but because the fog of self-doubt lifts. You begin to see that your wisdom is not separate from the greater wisdom of life. The choices that align with your knowing have a natural ease, while those that betray it always feel heavy, no matter how polished they appear on the outside. And as you continue to lean inward, you realize that clarity was never missing. It was only hidden beneath the habit of ignoring yourself. When you stop outsourcing and begin to listen, life itself becomes less a puzzle to solve and more a song to remember. Of course, the mind objects. It wants maps, assurances, outcomes neatly tied. But life does not unfold that way. It is a dance, not a calculation. And if you are always checking the steps, you will never hear the music. Trusting yourself means allowing the music to move you, even when you cannot see where the song will end. To trust yourself is to move with uncertainty without demanding guarantees. Life, by its very nature, does not offer absolute assurance. The future never arrives with a promise wrapped in certainty, nor does each decision come with a guarantee of success. Yet much of our suffering arises from the insistence that it should. We want the map before we take the step, the outcome before the beginning, the security before the risk. In this waiting, we lose the vitality of living, because life is not built on guarantees. It is built on movement, on the courage to act in the presence of the unknown. Trusting yourself is not about predicting what will happen. It is about knowing that whatever happens, you will be able to meet it. It is a shift from clinging to control toward surrendering to your own capacity. When you stop demanding certainty, you begin to see that the fear of uncertainty was never about the world outside, but about whether you believed you could handle it. Trust is the recognition that you carry within you the resilience to navigate what unfolds, even when the path twists in ways you did not expect. Think of a sailor setting out to sea. They cannot control the winds or the waves, yet they trust their ability to adjust the sails, to read the stars, to respond to the ocean as it changes. Without that trust, the sailor would never leave the shore, waiting endlessly for a perfect forecast that will never come. In much the same way, trusting yourself means allowing the voyage of your life to unfold, knowing that storms may come, but believing that you are not powerless in their midst. The demand for guarantees often paralyzes us. It convinces us that we should not act until every doubt has been silenced, until the outcome is secure. But such a moment never arrives because uncertainty is woven into existence. The irony is that when you release the demand for guarantees, a different kind of clarity emerges. You begin to move not because you know where you will end up, but because you trust that each step will reveal the next. This creates a rhythm with life, a dialogue between action and unfolding, rather than a rigid plan that resists the living flow of events. To trust yourself is to embrace uncertainty as part of the adventure rather than as a threat. It is to see that life's unpredictability is not evidence of danger, but the very space in which creativity and discovery arise. Guarantees would rob life of its depth, reducing every choice to a pre-written script. By leaning into the unknown, you allow yourself to be surprised, to grow in ways you could not have planned. And in that willingness, you discover that the real guarantee was never in the outcome. It was always in the strength, wisdom, and presence you carry within yourself. There is a great relief in this, for when you begin to trust yourself, you stop living as a constant problem to be fixed. You stop waiting for a future version of you to finally be worthy of living fully. Instead, you realize that the self you keep doubting is already enough, already capable of meeting this very moment. Self-trust is not control, but a surrender to your own natural intelligence. Control arises from fear, from the anxious belief that unless you manage, direct, and force every aspect of life, everything will collapse. It is the attempt to grip tightly to outcomes, to dictate how each step must unfold, as though the vastness of existence could be bent to the will of a single mind. But life does not work that way. The more tightly you try to control, the more fragmented and tense you become, because control is built on the illusion that you can master what was never meant to be mastered. Self-trust, on the other hand, is a release. It is not about tightening your grip, but about loosening it, allowing the deeper wisdom within you to guide your choices without constant interference. This natural intelligence does not come from calculation or rigid planning, but from an organic knowing that has always been present. Your body, for example, breathes without your command, heals wounds without your instructions, beats the heart without your management. In the same way, there is a quiet intelligence in your being that knows how to move through life when you allow it space. Surrendering to this intelligence does not mean passivity or indifference. It is not a careless drifting, but a trust that your deepest instincts, your quiet intuitions, and your subtle perceptions are far more attuned to reality than the restless need to control. When you surrender to it, you discover that life unfolds with a certain rhythm, a coherence that does not require constant correction. You begin to act with more ease because your actions rise from alignment rather than tension. Control seeks guarantees. It wants to eliminate risk, remove surprise, and dictate every turn of the path. But self-trust accepts that uncertainty is part of the landscape. Instead of resisting it, you move with it, confident not in the absence of difficulty, but in your capacity to respond to whatever arises. This surrender is not weakness. It is strength of a deeper kind, the strength that comes from cooperation with your own nature instead of endless resistance against it. When you stop trying to control every detail, you create space to listen. You hear the quieter voice within, the one drowned out by the noise of fear and rigidity. That voice does not speak in commands or demands, but in subtle nudges, in the feeling of resonance when something aligns, and in the heaviness when something does not. Trusting yourself is simply the willingness to follow that guidance, even when it defies logic or expectation. In surrendering to your own natural intelligence, you do not become less capable, you become more alive. The burden of control falls away, replaced by a fluidity that allows you to meet life as it comes. You realize that the intelligence you were searching for in plans and strategies was already present, waiting for you to stop forcing and start listening. This is the essence of self. Trust, not domination, but cooperation with the wisdom that was within you all along. And so, the invitation is simple. Stop outsourcing your wisdom. Stop bargaining with life for safety before you move. Instead, listen inwardly and let that guidance be enough. You may stumble, you may falter, but you will stumble as yourself, not as a shadow of someone else's approval. When you trust yourself, you discover that life has always been conspiring with you, not against you. Much of our struggle comes from the belief that existence is somehow hostile, that the challenges we face are punishments or obstacles set to hold us back. In that mindset, every difficulty feels like resistance, every delay like betrayal. But this view comes from mistrust of ourselves and of the larger intelligence that moves through life. When you begin to trust yourself, you see that what once appeared as opposition was, in fact, shaping you, preparing you, guiding you toward a deeper unfolding of who you are. Trust allows you to reinterpret life's events. A closed door no longer feels like rejection, but like redirection. A failure is no longer evidence of weakness, but an invitation to discover strength you did not know you carried. When you are at odds with yourself, these moments seem cruel, but when you are aligned with your own inner knowing, you begin to see them as part of the intricate design of growth. Life ceases to be a series of accidents and becomes a dialogue between you and the world, a conversation in which even silence has meaning. To say that life conspires with you does not mean it will hand you comfort at every turn. The river conspires with the fish, not by removing the current, but by teaching it to swim within the flow. The wind conspires with the bird, not by stilling the air, but by offering the resistance through which wings can lift. In the same way, life conspires with you by giving you the exact conditions needed to awaken the dormant capacities within you. The difficulty you resist often carries the very gift you need to grow into yourself. When you trust yourself, you stop seeing life as a series of battles to win. You begin to notice its subtler generosity, the way small moments align when you are attuned, the way opportunities appear when you are open, the way even loss clears space for something truer to emerge. Instead of assuming that the world is stacked against you, you feel supported by its unfolding, even when you cannot yet see the larger picture. This shift does not erase pain, but it transforms how you hold it. Instead of treating pain as an enemy, you recognize it as part of the fabric of becoming. Trusting yourself means you know that even in difficulty, you are not abandoned by life, for life itself is what moves through you, shaping your growth. In that recognition, resistance softens, and you step into a deeper cooperation with existence. You begin to live less from fear and more from wonder. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What is this teaching me? Where is it leading me?" And slowly, you realize that life was never against you. It was always in partnership with you, drawing out the fullness of who you are meant to be.